Dhyana and Samadhi. We have taken a cursory view of the different steps in Raja Yoga, except the finer ones, the training in concentration, which is the goal to which Raja Yoga will lead us. We see as human beings that all our knowledge, which is called rational, is referred to consciousness. My consciousness of this table and of your presence makes me know that the table and you are here. At the same time, there is a very great part of my existence of which I am not conscious. All the different organs inside the body, the different parts of the brain, nobody is conscious of these. When I eat food, I do it consciously. When I assimilate it, I do it unconsciously. When the food is manufactured into blood, it is done unconsciously. When out of the blood all the different parts of my body are strengthened, it is done unconsciously. And yet, it is I who am doing all this. There cannot be 20 people in this one body. How do I know that I do it and nobody else? It may be urged that my business is only in eating and assimilating the food, and that strengthening the body by the food is done for me by somebody else. That cannot be, because it can be demonstrated that almost every action of which we are now unconscious can be brought up to the plane of consciousness. The heart is beating apparently without our control. None of us here can control the heart. It goes on its own way. But by practice, men can bring even the heart under control until it will just beat at will, slowly or quickly, or almost stop. Nearly every part of the body can be brought under control. What does this show? That the functions which are beneath consciousness are also performed by us, only we are doing it unconsciously. We have, then, two planes in which the human mind works. First is the conscious plane, in which all work is always accompanied with the feeling of egoism. Next comes the unconscious plane, where all work is unaccompanied by the feeling of egoism. That part of mind work which is unaccompanied with the feeling of egoism is unconscious work, and that part which is accompanied with the feeling of egoism is conscious work. In the lower animals, this unconscious work is called instinct. In higher animals, and in the highest of all animals, man, what is called conscious work prevails. But it does not end here. There is a still higher plane upon which the mind can work. It can go beyond consciousness. Just as unconscious work is beneath consciousness, so there is another work which is above consciousness, and which also is not accompanied with the feeling of egoism. The feeling of egoism is only on the middle plane. When the mind is above or below that line, there is no feeling of I, and yet the mind works. When the mind goes beyond this line of self-consciousness, it is called Samadhi or superconsciousness. How, for instance, do we know that a man in Samadhi has not gone below consciousness, has not degenerated instead of going higher? In both cases, the works are unaccompanied with egoism. The answer is by the effects. By the results of the work, we know that which is below and that which is above. When a man goes into deep sleep, he enters a plane beneath consciousness. He works the body all the time. He breathes. He moves the body, perhaps, in his sleep, without any accompanying feeling of ego. He is unconscious, and when he returns from his sleep, he is the same man who went into it. The sum total of the knowledge which he had before he went into the sleep remains the same. It does not increase at all. No enlightenment comes. But when a man goes into Samadhi, if he goes into it a fool, he comes out a sage. What makes the difference? From one state, a man comes out the very same man that he went in, and from another state, the man comes out enlightened, a sage, a prophet, a saint. His whole character is changed, his life changed, illumined. These are the two different effects. Now the effects being different, the causes must be different. As this illumination with which a man comes back from Samadhi is much higher than can be got from unconsciousness, or much higher than can be got by reasoning in a conscious state, it must therefore be superconsciousness, and Samadhi is called the superconscious state. This, in short, is the idea of Samadhi. What is its application? The application is here. The field of reason, or of the conscious workings of the mind, is narrow and limited. There is a little circle within which human reason must move. It cannot go beyond. Every attempt to go beyond is impossible. Yet it is beyond this circle of reason that there lies all that humanity holds most dear. All these questions, whether there is an immortal soul, whether there is a God, whether there is any supreme intelligence guiding this universe or not, are beyond the field of reason. Reason can never answer these questions. What does reason say? It says, I am an agnostic. I do not know either yea or nay. Yet these questions are so important to us. Without a proper answer to them, human life will be purposeless. All our ethical theories, all our moral attitudes, all that is good and great in human nature have been moulded upon answers that have come from beyond the circle. It is very important, therefore, that we should have answers to these questions. If life is only a short play, if the universe is only a fortuitous combination of atoms, then why should I do good to another? Why should there be mercy, justice, or fellow feeling? The best thing for this world would be to make hay while the sun shines, each man for himself. If there is no hope, why should I love my brother and not cut his throat? If there is nothing beyond, if there is no freedom, but only rigorous dead laws, I should only try to make myself happy here. You will find people saying nowadays that they have utilitarian grounds as the basis of morality. What is this basis? Procuring the greatest amount of happiness to the greatest number. Why should I do this? Why should I not produce the greatest unhappiness to the greatest number, if that serves my purpose? How will utilitarians answer this question? How do you know what is right or what is wrong? I am impelled by my desire for happiness, and I fulfill it, and it is my nature. I know nothing beyond. I have these desires and must fulfill them. Why should you complain? Whence come all these truths about human life, about morality, about the immortal soul, about God, about love and sympathy, about being good, and above all, about being unselfish? All ethics, all human action, and all human thought hang upon this one idea of unselfishness. The whole idea of human life can be put into that one word: unselfishness. Why should we be unselfish? Where is the necessity, the force, the power of my being unselfish? You call yourself a rational man, a utilitarian, but if you do not show me a reason for utility, I say you are irrational. Show me the reason why I shouldn't be selfish. To ask one to be unselfish may be good as poetry, but poetry isn't reason. Show me a reason. Why shall I be unselfish, and why be good? Because Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so say so, does not weigh with me. Where is the utility of my being unselfish? My utility is to be selfish, if utility means the greatest amount of happiness. What is the answer? The utilitarian can never give it. The answer is that this world is only one drop in an infinite ocean, one link in an infinite chain. Where did those that preached unselfishness and taught it to the human race get this idea? We know it is not instinctive. The animals which have instinct do not know it. Neither is it reason. Reason doesn't know anything about these ideas. Whence then did they come? We find in studying history one fact held in common by all the great teachers of religion the world ever had. They all claim to have got their truths from beyond, only many of them didn't know where they got them from. For instance, one would say that an angel came down in the form of a human being with wings and said to him, "Here, O man, this is the message." Another says that a deva, a bright being, appeared to him. A third says he dreamed that his ancestor came and told him certain things. He didn't know anything beyond that. But this is common, that all claim that this knowledge has come to them from beyond, not through their reasoning power. What does the science of yoga teach? It teaches that they were right in claiming that all this knowledge came to them from beyond reasoning, but that it came from within themselves. The yogi teaches that the mind itself has a higher state of existence, beyond reason, a superconscious state, and when the mind gets to that higher state, then this knowledge, beyond reasoning, comes to man. Metaphysical and transcendental knowledge comes to that man. This state of going beyond reason, transcending ordinary human nature, may sometimes come by chance to a man who doesn't understand its science. He, as it were, stumbles upon it. When he stumbles upon it, he generally interprets it as coming from outside. So this explains why inspiration, or transcendental knowledge, may be the same in different countries, but in one country it will seem to come through an angel, and in another through a deva, and in a third through God. What does it mean? It means that the mind brought the knowledge by its own nature, and that the finding of the knowledge was interpreted according to the belief and education of the person through whom it came. The real fact is that these various men, as it were, stumbled upon this superconscious state. The yogi says there is a great danger in stumbling upon this state. In a good many cases, there is the danger of the brain becoming deranged, and as a rule, you'll find that all of those men, however great they were, who had stumbled upon this superconscious state without understanding it, groped in the dark, and generally had, along with their knowledge, some quaint superstition. They open themselves to hallucinations. Muhammad claimed that the angel Gabriel came to him in a cave one day and took him on the heavenly horse Harak, and he visited the heavens. But with all that, Muhammad spoke some wonderful truths. If you read the Quran, you find the most wonderful truths mixed with superstitions. How will you explain it? That man was inspired, no doubt, but that inspiration was, as it were, stumbled upon. He was not a trained yogi, and didn't know the reason of what he was doing. Think of the good Muhammad did to the world, and think of the great evil that has been done through his fanaticism. Think of the millions massacred through his teachings, mothers bereft of their children, children made orphans, whole countries destroyed, millions upon millions of people killed. So we see this danger by studying the lives of great teachers like Muhammad and others. Yet we find at the same time that they were all inspired. Whenever a prophet got into the superconscious state by heightening his emotional nature, he brought away from it not only some truths, but some fanaticism also, some superstition which injured the world as much as the greatness of the teaching helped. To get any reason out of the massive incongruity we call human life, we have to transcend our reason, but we must do it scientifically, slowly, by regular practice, and we must cast off all superstition. We must take up the study of the superconscious state, just as any other science. On reason, we must have to lay our foundation. We must follow reason as far as it leads. And when reason fails, reason itself will show us the way to the highest plane. When you hear a man say, "I am inspired," and then talk irrationally, reject it. Why? Because these three states, instinct, reason, and superconsciousness, or the unconscious, conscious, and superconscious states, belong to one and the same mind. There are not three minds in one man, but one state of it develops into the others. Instinct develops into reason, and reason into the transcendental consciousness. Therefore, not one of these states contradicts the others. Real inspiration never contradicts reason, but fulfills it. Just as you find the great prophets saying, "I come not to destroy, but to fulfill," so inspiration always comes to fulfill reason and is in harmony with it. All the different steps in yoga are intended to bring us scientifically to the superconscious state, or Samadhi. Furthermore, this is a most vital point to understand, that inspiration is as much in every man's nature as it was in that of the ancient prophets. These prophets were not unique. They were men as you or I. They were great yogis. They had gained this superconsciousness, and you and I can get the same. They were not peculiar people. The very fact that one man ever reached that state proves that it is possible for every man to do so. Not only is it possible, but every man must eventually get to that state, and that is religion. Experience is the only teacher we have. We may talk and reason all our lives, but we shall not understand a word of truth until we experience it ourselves. You cannot hope to make a man a surgeon by simply giving him a few books. You cannot satisfy my curiosity to see a country by showing me a map. I must have actual experience. Maps can only create curiosity in us to get more perfect knowledge. Beyond that, they have no value whatever. Clinging to books only degenerates the human mind. Was there ever a more horrible blasphemy than the statement that all the knowledge of God is confined to this or that book? How dare men call God infinite, and yet try to compress him within the covers of a little book? Millions of people have been killed because they did not believe what the books said, because they would not see all the knowledge of God within the covers of a book. Of course, this killing and murdering has gone by, but the world is still tremendously bound up in a belief in books. In order to reach the superconscious state in a scientific manner, it is necessary to pass through the various steps of Raja Yoga I have been teaching. After Pratyahara and Dharana, we come to Dhyana, meditation. When the mind has been trained to remain fixed on a certain internal or external location, there comes to it the power of flowing in an unbroken current, as it were, towards that point. This state is called dhyana. When one has so intensified the power of dhyana as to be able to reject the external part of perception and remain meditating only on the internal part, the meaning, that state is called Samadhi. The three, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi, together are called Samyama. That is, if the mind can first concentrate upon an object, and then is able to continue in that concentration for a length of time, and then, by continued concentration, to dwell only on the internal part of the perception, of which the object was the effect, everything comes under the control of such a mind. This meditative state is the highest state of existence. So long as there is desire, no real happiness can come. It is only the contemplative, witness-like study of objects that brings to us real enjoyment and happiness. The animal has its happiness in the senses, the man in his intellect, and the God in spiritual contemplation. It is only to the soul that has attained to this contemplative state that the world really becomes beautiful. To him who desires nothing, and does not mix himself up with them, the manifold changes of nature are one panorama of beauty and sublimity. These ideas have to be understood in dhyana or meditation. We hear a sound. First, there is the external vibration. Second, the nerve motion that carries it to the mind. Third, the reaction from the mind, along with which flashes the knowledge of the object, which was the external cause of these different changes from the ethereal vibrations to the mental reactions. These three are called in yoga shabda, sound, artha, meaning, and jnana, knowledge. In the language of physics and physiology, they are called ethereal vibration, the motion in the nerve and brain, and the mental reaction. Now these, though distinct processes, have become mixed up in such a fashion as to become quite indistinct. In fact, we cannot now perceive any of these. We only perceive their combined effect, what we call the external object. Every act of perception includes these three, and there is no reason why we should not be able to distinguish them. When, by the previous preparations, it becomes strong and controlled, and has the power of finer perception, the mind should be employed in meditation. This meditation should begin with the gross objects and slowly rise to the finer and finer until it becomes objectless. The mind should first be employed in perceiving the external causes of sensations, then the internal motions, and then its own reaction. When it has succeeded in perceiving the external causes of sensations by themselves, the mind will acquire the power of perceiving all fine material existences, all fine bodies and forms. When it can succeed in perceiving the motions inside by themselves, it will gain the control of all mental waves, in itself or in others, even before they have translated themselves into physical energy. And when he will be able to perceive the mental reaction by itself, the yogi will acquire the knowledge of everything, as every sensible object and every thought is the result of this reaction. Then will he have seen the very foundations of his mind, and it will be under his perfect control. Different powers will come to the yogi, and if he yields to the temptation of any one of these, the road to his further progress will be barred. Such is the evil of running after enjoyments. But if he is strong enough to reject even these miraculous powers, he will attain the goal of yoga, the complete suppression of the waves in the ocean of the mind. Then the glory of the soul, undisturbed by the distractions of the mind or motions of the body, will shine in its full effulgence, and the yogi will find himself as he is and as he always was, the essence of knowledge, the immortal, the all-pervading. Samadhi is the property of every human being, nay, every animal. From the lowest animal to the highest angel, sometime or other, each one will have to come to that state, and then alone, will real religion begin for him. Until then we only struggle towards that stage. There is no difference now between us and those who have no religion, because we have no experience. What is concentration good for, save to bring us to this experience? Each one of the steps to attain Samadhi has been reasoned out, properly adjusted, scientifically organized, and when faithfully practiced, will surely lead us to the desired end. Then will all sorrows cease, all miseries vanish, the seeds for actions will be burned, and the soul will be free forever. Raja Yoga in brief. The following is a summary of Raja Yoga, freely translated from the Kurma Purana. The fire of yoga burns the cage of sin that is around a man. Knowledge becomes purified, and nirvana is directly obtained. From yoga comes knowledge. Knowledge again helps the yogi. He who combines in himself both yoga and knowledge, with him the Lord is pleased. Those that practice Maha-yoga, either once a day, or twice a day, or thrice, or always, know them to be gods. Yoga is divided into two parts. One is called Abhava, and the other Maha-yoga, where oneself is meditated upon as zero and bereft of quality. That is called Abhava. That in which one sees the self as full of bliss and bereft of all impurities and one with God, is called Maha-yoga. The yogi, by each one, realizes his self. The other yogas that we read and hear of do not deserve to be ranked with the excellent Maha-yoga, in which the yogi finds himself and the whole universe as God. This is the highest of all yogas. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi are the steps in Raja Yoga, of which non-injury, truthfulness, non-covetousness, chastity, not receiving anything from another, are called yama. This purifies the mind, the citta. Never producing pain by thought, word and deed in any living being is what is called ahimsa, non-injury. There is no virtue higher than non-injury. There is no happiness higher than what a man obtains by this attitude of non-offensiveness to all creation. By truth we attain fruits of work. Through truth everything is attained. In truth everything is established. Relating facts as they are, this is truth. Not taking others' goods by stealth or by force is called asteya, non-covetousness. Chastity in thought, word and deed, always and in all conditions, is what is called brahmacharya. Not receiving any present from anybody, even when one is suffering terribly, is what is called aparigraha. The idea is that when a man receives a gift from another, his heart becomes impure, he becomes low, he loses his independence, he becomes bound and attached. The following are helps to success in yoga and are called niyama, or regular habits and observances. Tapas, austerity. Svadhyaya, study. Santosha, contentment. Saucha, purity. Ishvara pranidhana, worshipping God. Fasting, or in other ways controlling the body, is called physical tapas. Repeating the Vedas and other mantras, by which the sattva material in the body is purified, is called study, svadhyaya. There are three sorts of repetitions of these mantras. One is called the verbal, another semi-verbal, and the third mental. The verbal or audible is the lowest, and the inaudible is the highest of all. The repetition which is loud is the verbal. The next one is where only the lips move, but no sound is heard. The inaudible repetition of the mantra, accompanied with the thinking of its meaning, is called the mental repetition, and is the highest. The sages have said that there are two sorts of purification, external and internal. The purification of the body by water, earth, or other materials is the external purification, as bathing, etc. Purification of the mind by truth and by all other virtues is what is called internal purification. Both are necessary. It is not sufficient that a man should be internally pure and externally dirty. When both are not attainable, the internal purity is the better, but no one will be a yogi until he has both. Worship of God is by praise, by thought, by devotion. We have spoken about yama and niyama. The next is asana, posture. The only thing to understand about it is leaving the body free, holding the chest, shoulders and head straight. Then comes pranayama. Prana means the vital forces in one's own body. Ayama means controlling them. There are three sorts of pranayama: the very simple, the middle, and the very high. Pranayama is divided into three parts: filling, restraining, and emptying. When you begin with 12 seconds, it is the lowest pranayama. When you begin with 24 seconds, it is the middle pranayama. That pranayama is the best, which begins with 36 seconds. In the lowest kind of pranayama, there is perspiration. In the medium kind, quivering of the body. And in the highest pranayama, levitation of the body and influx of great bliss. There is a mantra called the Gayatri. It is a very holy verse of the Vedas. We meditate on the glory of that being who has produced this universe. May he enlighten our minds. Om is joined to it at the beginning and at the end. In one pranayama, repeat 3 Gayatris. In all books they speak of pranayama as being divided into rechaka, rejecting or exhaling, puraka, inhaling, and kumbhaka, restraining, stationary. The indriyas, the organs of the senses, are acting outwards and coming in contact with external objects. Bringing them under the control of the will is what is called pratyahara, or gathering towards oneself. Fixing the mind on the lotus of the heart, or on the centre of the head, is what is called dharana. Limited to one spot, making that spot the base, a particular kind of mental waves rise. These are not swallowed up by other kinds of waves, but by degrees become prominent, while all the others recede and finally disappear. Next, the multiplicity of these waves gives place to unity, and one wave only is left in the mind. This is dhyana, meditation. When no basis is necessary, when the whole of the mind has become one wave, one formedness, it is called Samadhi. Bereft of all help from places and centres, only the meaning of the thought is present. If the mind can be fixed on the centre for 12 seconds, it will be a dharana. 12 such dharanas will be a dhyana, and 12 such dhyanas will be a samadhi. Where there is fire, or in water, or on ground which is strewn with dry leaves, where there are many anthills, where there are wild animals or danger, where 4 streets meet, where there is too much noise, where there are many wicked persons, yoga must not be practiced. This applies more particularly to India. Do not practice when the body feels very lazy or ill, or when the mind is very miserable and sorrowful. Go to a place which is well hidden, and where people do not come to disturb you. Do not choose dirty places, rather choose beautiful scenery, or a room in your own house which is beautiful. When you practice, first salute all the ancient yogis and your own guru and God, and then begin. Dhyana is spoken of, and a few examples are given of what to meditate upon. Sit straight and look at the tip of your nose. Later on we shall come to know how that concentrates the mind, how by controlling the 2 optic nerves one advances a long way towards the control of the arc of reaction, and so to the control of the will. Here are a few specimens of meditation. Imagine a lotus on the top of the head, several inches up, with virtue as its centre, and knowledge as its stalk. The 8 petals of the lotus are the 8 powers of the yogi. Inside, the stamens and pistils are renunciation. If the yogi refuses the external powers, he will come to salvation. So the 8 petals of the lotus are the 8 powers, but the internal stamens and pistils are extreme renunciation, the renunciation of all these powers. Inside of that lotus, think of the Golden One, the Almighty, the Intangible, He whose name is Om, the Inexpressible, surrounded with effulgent light. Meditate on that. Another meditation is given. Think of a space in your heart, and in the midst of that space, think that a flame is burning. Think of that flame as your own soul, and inside the flame is another effulgent light, and that is the soul of your soul, God. Meditate upon that in the heart. Chastity, non-injury, forgiving even the greatest enemy, truth, faith in the Lord, these are all different vrittis. Be not afraid if you're not perfect in all these. Work, they will come. He who has given up all attachment, all fear, and all anger, he whose whole soul has gone unto the Lord, he who has taken refuge in the Lord, whose heart has become purified, with whatsoever desire he comes to the Lord, he will grant that to him. Therefore, worship him through knowledge, love, or renunciation. He who hates none, who is the friend of all, who is merciful to all, who has nothing of his own, who is free from egoism, who is even-minded in pain and pleasure, who is forbearing, who is always satisfied, who works always in yoga, whose self has become controlled, whose will is firm, whose mind and intellect are given up unto me, such a one is my beloved Bhakta, from whom comes no disturbance, who cannot be disturbed by others, who is free from joy, anger, fear and anxiety, such a one is my beloved. He who does not depend on anything, who is pure and active, who does not care whether good comes or evil, and never becomes miserable, who has given up all efforts for himself, who is the same in praise or in blame, with a silent, thoughtful mind, blessed with what little comes his way, homeless, for the whole world is his home, and who is steady in his ideas, such a one is my beloved Bhakta. Such alone become yogis. There was a great God-sage called Narada. Just as there are sages among mankind, great yogis, so there are great yogis among the gods. Narada was a good yogi and very great. He travelled everywhere. One day he was passing through a forest and saw a man who had been meditating until the white ants had built a huge mound round his body. So long had he been sitting in that position. He said to Narada, "Where are you going?" Narada replied, "I'm going to heaven." "Then ask God when he will be merciful to me, when I shall attain freedom." Further on Narada saw another man. He was jumping about, singing, dancing, and said, "O Narada, where are you going?" His voice and his gestures were wild. Narada said, "I'm going to heaven." "Then ask when I shall be free." Narada went on. In course of time he came again by the same road, and there was the man who had been meditating with the anthill round him. He said, "O Narada, did you ask the Lord about me?" "Oh yes." "What did he say?" "The Lord told me that you would attain freedom in 4 more births." Then the man began to weep and wail and said, "I have meditated until an anthill has grown around me, and I have 4 more births yet." Narada went to the other man. "Did you ask my question?" Oh yes. Do you see this tamarind tree? I have to tell you that as many leaves as there are on that tree, so many times you shall be born, and then you shall attain freedom. The man began to dance for joy and said, I shall have freedom after such a short time. A voice came, My child, you will have freedom this minute. That was the reward for his perseverance. He was ready to work through all those births. Nothing discouraged him. But the first man felt that even 4 more births were too long. Only perseverance like that of the man who was willing to wait eons brings about the highest result.